This is the scaled version of the framework and base for the fireplace freestanding column. The design has been started on a heavy base with metal base with a spike. Then to the spike, as you'll see in the previous photos, the bamboo has been cable tied up and fixed to that to add an internal structure, to add for securing mechanics. And then I have cable tied the first length of the chicken wire to this internal structure, and then wrapped around and bent the chicken wire back on itself, but also added additional cable ties for additional reinforcement. The reason I've done that is whilst bending the wire back and twisting it on itself holds firm whilst empty, there stands the risk that once I start putting foliages and plant material into the chicken wire frame, it can stretch the chicken wire, and the weight can make that chicken wire open up in places, which has to be avoided. So I've also attached another cable tie low down, threaded through the loops of the wire and fixed to the bamboo. This is to ensure that the chicken wire can't slide up and move up the poles. And then I have done the same at the top, so this section is completely rigid. I've then created a slight return end with the chicken wire. This will hold a light amount of foliage and flowers, just to give us a nice swooping finish at the end. In the real life scenario, when I set up, the base of this obviously is much larger, and I'd often wire into this chicken wire these funeral vases, which allow water to be placed in, and any soft stemmed flowers or delicate items can have a water source within. Foliages don't need to all be in water. They can withstand the duration of the event without a water source. On site, obviously, need to ensure that there is additional security, that this base is not going to move, be blown over with the wind or guests walking past. So I have these weights that are quite slim, and I'd put one either side for balance, and these can all be stacked as well. If I felt that it needed more than the two could give, I'd have additional ones with me. Obviously, against this scaled version, they're way too big, but on the life-size ones, they're the perfect fit, that the foliage at the base, coming out of the base of the chicken wire, just covers this just perfectly, and the mechanics of it can't be seen, but it just gives us that additional reinforcement, ensuring health and safety, that there's no risk to the venue or the guests. Occasionally, we're lucky enough to also have on the wall of where we may be working, some of the churches that we're at already have hooks in from previous work that's authorised by the church, so we would use that as an additional roping or cable tying to ensure again that the structure cannot blow forward and blow over. Certain areas are more prone to the wind. The church that this scenario would take place in, the opening of the church, the doorway is actually a kind of a wind tunnel, so extra reinforcement of extra weights would always be used there. this particular design for the scenario is going to be inside the venue. So we will weight it, but we won't have the elements working against us. It will just be to safeguard the guests and to also ensure there's no damage to the fireplace and surrounding area of the venue. So I've started to insert into the chicken wire a selection of foliages to start creating some shape, and we can see that they're well secure. They're not coming out at the moment. The shape still needs work, but I'm going to start adding other textures in there now to mix the colours, the textures and the density of the foliages, so that we'll have a really interesting base before we add any flowers. And nothing's coming out even if I give it a good tug. I'm not sure if we can see how they're starting to crisscross there inside the framework, so they're starting to interlock with one another as well. So I have built up the layers of foliages following the outline shape of the chicken wire. We've got interest and definition. We have contrasts of textures along with colour, so we have a harmony and balance. There's openness in some areas with the wispy asparagus fern. Then we have some of the denser conifers down below. As you can see, the mechanics are almost totally hidden. I haven't covered absolutely every element of it at this stage because I need to ensure that I have access points for the flowers to go in. Any mechanics still visible once I've added those, I can go in and I can hide with some foliage. So what I'm going to do now, because this is a scale version, I don't have the space for the funeral vases, so I'm going to put each flower into a water vial before I insert it into the arch, the column design. I'm going to use the orchid pick vials because the colour will be concealed amongst the foliage. The elongated pick will allow me to feed through the foliage and ensure that I get anchorage into the into the chicken wire, and still have a water reservoir for the flowers to be able to keep hydrated during the event. I have a selection of flowers prepared, so I can start inserting these into the design. I'm going to position the larger head one lower in the design. This is the completed scaled design for the freestanding column fireplace piece that I will be creating for the Festival of Flowers. The mixture of different sized heads keeping the larger roses down to the denser area at the base, along with the ranunculus, interspersed the ranunculus throughout the design, and then balancing with a mixture of smaller headed flowers. This doesn't have the full selection that I have proposed for my completed design. However, this allows me to create a proportioned scale design.